All right. Well, good morning, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started with today's ADT session. We're actually kind of moving into a little different type of ADT session here through the summer months. I did this the last couple of years, and I think it was a big hit. We call it our summer speaker series. And my goal is over the next number of weeks to bring in top agents from across the country on a number of different metrics. We're going to look at not just top production, although today is definitely top production, but we're going to be looking at, agents who are crushing it in life insurance, agents that are really, doing a great job with storefronts, maybe agents that are have figured out how to leverage sub-agents well, just bringing in some top talent from across the country to chat with us a little bit. So that's kind of what we're launching today. A few logistical things that I'll mention. Next week, I'm not going to be hosting an ADT session next week. It's abnormal for me to go one week without, then 1 week with, and 1 week without, but I have something next week that I can't avoid being involved in. And so I just can't be here next week. So we'll start again the week after next, and I'll give you guys a little better notice. I was on vacation last week, so I'm sorry for the short notice on bringing Alex in today. A few other things I just wanted to mention. For those of you who haven't been monitoring, there has been some rule changes at a federal level that are probably going to begin impacting our business, not in a negative or positive way. Honestly, they're rule changes that we expected the Biden administration to implement 12 to 18 months ago. And it has to do primarily with short-term insurance and then with scheduled indemnity type products. So I got a little bit of feedback from our legal team this morning on my TVP call. There will be more communications coming out. Right now, this is just a proposed ruling. And so it's got to go through a bit of a process with HHS to become final. But ultimately, the core of what we're looking at is the Biden administration is looking to limit the duration of short-term insurance policies down to a maximum of 4 months. So today in some states, like in Michigan, you can go up to 6 months. In Indiana, you can go anywhere from 12 months, you can go 36 months on a tri-term policy. If this ruling gets approved and everything gets implemented, we will lose the ability to sell longer duration short-term policies. It also was notated on the call this morning that these policies and the new implementation is going to be at a federal level, but then states could also do things, layer additional requirements on top of whatever the federal requirements are. We're not expecting any changes here before the tail end of the fourth quarter. So, these things happen over time. Ultimately, I believe, and I think a lot of people would agree, this is a play by the Biden administration to get rid of policies that are outside of the ACA platform and push more and more consumers into the Obamacare Affordable Care Act ACA, plans. I don't think that stacking policies, once we go to this, in that, you buy a policy for 4 months and then another policy for 4 months, another policy for 4 months to try to bridge through, is going to be a very effective method, especially to bridge through, 6, 9, 12 months. Part of it is we know that they're not going to allow you to buy a short-term policy from the same carrier back to back. So you couldn't buy a 4-month short-term plan from United Healthcare, and then when that expires, but another short-term 4-month plan from United Healthcare. They're not going to allow that. It does look like they're going to allow us to stack these policies at some level, but it's most likely going to be stacking one carrier on top of another carrier. And in the states that we operate, Indiana and Michigan, we just don't have enough carriers offering short-term insurance to appropriately stack and bridge through. So I think that's going to be some developments that are kind of to be determined. I don't want to make any final statements because there's no final rulings of any sort. I just wanted to give you guys an idea of kind of what's coming. I would say for those of you who sell in Indiana, this might be an additional arrow in your quiver to push people into the tri-term 3-year type policies, because at least the way the initial ruling was written, it appears that those policies will be grandfathered in. And so somebody who buys like a 36-month policy here before the end of the year, there's a really good chance that they're going to be able to, continue that for that full 36 months. Obviously, the problem that we run into with stacking short-term policies is that every 4 months, the consumer has to requalify for a new policy based on good health, and underwriting will determine whether or not they can actually get that policy. So that's one of the things that's going to create some difficulties. There's also a second piece to this legislation, which addresses more indemnity type products. And so there will probably be some product development that will need to happen both with our Chesapeake products and with our outside carrier products around policies that pay the thing that they're trying to get away from is a policy that gives you $100 for going in and getting an MRI done. So if it's just paying per service, that's going to be a difficult thing under this new legislation to continue to have. So obviously, Health Markets, all of our carrier partners are deep in discussions. Our legal team is reviewing all of this. I would expect in the next couple of days to see something, a preliminary statement from Health Markets. I just wanted to update you all on kind of where we're at. A lot to be determined on that yet, but I did want to at least comment on that in our session today. So with that, I don't want to spend a lot more time on anything else. I really want to focus on our summer speaker series and specifically Mr. Alex Wertenteil, who has now joined us. To give you guys a little bit of background, Alex has been with the organization for many years. This is a family tradition within his personal family. His mother was one of the most prolific leaders we've ever had in the organization. And I know Alex started in the business very young. I'll let him share a little bit about his story with you. But Alex and I have worked side by side as sales leaders and agents for many years. He has far outperformed me on every level of personal production metrics. I'd sent out an overview to you guys yesterday, just showing that, Alex has written over 15 million FYCRs. He's about 5 or 6 million ahead of the number 2 agent in the entire country. Overall career, lifetime business written with the organization. And a couple of things I'd say about Alex. Number one, I think he does this business the right way. He does run a lot of this person. It's not like he's got an enormous team of sub agents under him or all these people working for him. He's doing the grind day in and day out and doing a lot of the work himself. His persistency is exceptionally high. So he doesn't have, we see some teams and agents across the country who have an extremely high fall off where they sell a lot of business, but it doesn't stick. Alex has a very high persistency rate. I'll tell you, I think the first time I really had an opportunity to meet Alex was many years ago. Him and I were at our celebration event in Texas together, and we got pulled into the main auditorium area. I don't know if Alex even remembers this or not, but we got pulled into the main auditorium. And the reason for that was because we were walking the stage and they needed some sort of a picture of us receiving an award. And I don't know, I think at that point, I hadn't received any national awards previously. And I don't think Alex had either. So they had like no inventory of pictures of us. So they literally had us get on the stage in a dark room and act like we were receiving a reward so they could get the necessary pictures for the evening event later that day. And so that was the first opportunity I had to meet Alex. I know he had to be very early in his career because I know I was as well. But since that time, I've had the opportunity to work very closely with Alex. We serve in very similar roles from an AM perspective. He's an agent, a top agent. He's a top sales leader, and he's also in the agency manager role. So he has oversight for a specific geographic segment of the country. So I'm gonna, Alex, are you able to unmute?
I think I should be unmuted, right? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm gonna.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Well, first of all, I appreciate all the accolades. I would say if 50% of those were true, I would be as awesome as you just made me sound. But thank you, Silas. And it's definitely not true that I'm ahead of you on everything. That's just not true. One day you guys will come on my call and I'll tell you more about Silas. But anyway, I'm happy to be here. It's a great opportunity. You guys, and I'm not saying this because he's sitting right in front of me. You guys are truly, truly fortunate to have Silas as your leader. I appreciate him saying that I do things the right way. There is nobody, there's literally nobody at this company that I know that's as diligent in the business, understanding the business, the ins and outs, the process, the compliance, the technology, who really does it the right way, like Silas. And I genuinely mean that. And I think that you all know that firsthand. So you're very fortunate. And if I could add anything to what you guys already know, I'm happy to. And now that you say that story, it is coming back to me. And I think that's probably still a picture that I use on my website. So when people say, that's not you, I'm like, it was me. So whatever, I've aged a little bit, we all have, no judgment. But in any case, my story is very simple. I started when I was 14. It's a true story. That is a true story. My mom I remember my mom started in this business as an agent. I could genuinely tell you that, she taught me and many others really everything that we know about this business. She was with the company for a couple of decades. I think she probably left the company 4 or 5 years ago, give or take. But she was a top agent, and then she really went through the system, became a top manager. All the way to the, to an executive role and top trainer at the company. I started when I was a teenager, making calls for her. Some of you may have heard the story, but it's definitely true. There was a few summers that I worked for her, and she used to pay me as a telemarketer, calling really crappy leads. We talk about leads now. Those were really bad leads. And she paid me. There were no live transfers, no presets, none of that. Just a name and a number. And I used to call those, and I think she used to pay me $10 if I got an appointment with a single, and $25 if I got an appointment with a family. And that was it. It wasn't like a commission split. It was nothing. It was $10, $25, and that was the end of it. And that's literally where my career started. I became an agent a couple of years ago, and then really I left. I did it for a few years. I remember 595,000 QPCs. I don't know what that converts to in FYCRs, but it was 595 QPCs. I left the company, and then I came back a few years later. So my official start date was when my second son was born. So it was May of 2006. That was my restart date, and I've been here ever since. And here we are again. But I remember when I left, I was upset that I was going to lose those 595 QPCs, and I'm like, all right, so be it. But in any case, I'm thrilled to be here. I love what I do. And I guess, like Silas, we're very fortunate to be in the role that we're in, because we have a front seat. When we I tell my agents this all the time in Maryland, when we bring information to you in terms of whether it's product information, process, compliance, how to deal with clients, what's going on, it's not information that we have from when we started in 2006, 2010. It's real-time information of what we are seeing today in the field. So when we get in front of you, we're sharing information. We're learning from you. You're learning from us, but we're giving you real information in real time of what's going on today. And, even as I got on and I heard Silas talking about some of the new regulations that have just rolled out, we're able to give that information to you, not just like reading you what the White House press said, right? Not what the 500-page document says. It's more of what you need to know is, and what we need to share together is, how are we going to deal with that? What's the verbiage that we're going to use with the client, and we're able to brainstorm that together because we're also in the field. And again, I'm very blessed, and I'm very appreciative to the company that they allow me to be in the role that I'm in, of playing this dual hat role. But in any case, I'll turn it over to Silas, and I'm happy to talk about everything that you want to talk about.
Well, I think that's a very valid point. I want to go back to that, because that's one thing. I think Alex is in a unique position. I'm in a unique position. We have two other gentlemen, Jeremy Stern and David Piavis, who are in this unique position where we're agents, we're sales leaders, and then we have a seat at the executive leadership table. And so I've always felt very blessed in that too, because that does we're at the sharp end of the stick. And I know Alex feels this as well with many of our peers that are in the executive leadership team. They're trying to drive, but they're not in the street knowing what's going on. And so I do think it's, I feel thankful that the company listens to us in the way that they do, because I think it does drive a lot of the direction of the organization, from technology to product development to strategy, whatever we're doing. And so I've developed quite a bond with these other three gentlemen that are in a similar role. So it's been fun. So I want to go back a little bit. I mean, obviously you're still crushing it from a personal production standpoint. I think right now you're number 3 in the country year to date, and continuing to maintain that. But I want to get down to some of the kind of granular activities that drove success for you. Many of the people on the call today are I got a room of 8 brand new agents here in front of me. And then we've got, 31 people on the call that are all tier 1 or tier 2, trying to figure out how to take their business to the next level. There are some tier 3 and tier 4 sprinkled in because they wanted to come listen to you talk, Alex. But I think I'd like to just ask some questions around, like, what are you doing in your business? Especially, what did you do early on to get started? I think, to your point, you made a lot of phone calls, but I'd love to just hear more, like, what were the granular activities you did to drive new business early in your career?
So yeah, so early on, I'll tell you from the beginning. But the truth is, what I did in the beginning really lasted for probably at least 10, probably more like 15, 16, maybe even 17 years. So it wasn't just like 6 months and I was done. And again, that's really the beauty of this business, and really particularly the beauty of health markets, is that there's not only one way to do this, right? There's many ways. And if you look at the career standings and you look at the top 10, 15, 20 agents, they're all different, right? We're all dealing with the same company, the same products, similar but different clients, but we all have a different way and our own unique way that we're able to tweak the business. So for me, what worked for me was just grinding the phone. I mean, I'm talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dials nonstop. And to me, the way that I was trained in this business is that this business is a science and an art, but the numbers don't lie. There's nothing else that will stand in my head more than that. The numbers don't lie. And if you grind the phone and you make X amount of phone calls, I'm happy to tell you what the numbers were back in 2003 and 2006. They've changed, okay? But back then, if I would dial consistently, and when I mean, and that's another thing, when I talk about dialing, I talk about sitting in your chair, okay, and just dialing. Doesn't mean like I dial 3 calls and I go out and, change a load of laundry, grab a Coke, or do something else. I'm talking about real dialing. So back in the day, if I would dial for an hour, consistent dialing, I would get an appointment. Okay. So back in the day, I knew that if I dialed 10 hours, I was going to get 10 appointments. Now, is it always going to be to the T? Every single hour I get an appointment? Of course not. Right. It's not such a science. Right. You might go 3 hours and get nothing. And then in the next hour, you'll get 2 appointments. But those were the numbers. It was an hour for an hour of real dialing, I got an appointment, but I was talking about 6, 7, 8, 900 dials minimum. Probably way over 1,000 dials a week, but it would be nonstop. So I wasn't, even now, most agents or many agents are not using the less expensive leads. When I have new agents, I don't give them live transfers right away. I don't think it's a good model. I think they have to learn work ethic. They have to learn how to really dial the phone. So I'll throw them less expensive leads. If I could get B leads, great. If they're not available, then we're buying them $2 leads just to learn the work ethic. So the work ethic in this business, to me, is number one critical. There is nothing that's more important than the work ethic. Everything else, in terms of learning the product and the process, everything else will come. But if you don't know how to be self-employed and actually sit in your chair and work, then I hate to say it, you don't really have a chance. And the other way around is you might not be that best salesperson, the best networker, the natural, guy that you would think is, oh, he's a top sales guy. And I can tell you, frankly, for myself, I'm not that person. I'm not the person that's walking into a crowd, in health markets, I'm comfortable. But in general, if I walk into a social environment, a social outing, I'm not the guy that's in the middle of the crowd. That's your natural sales guy. Not at all. To me, I built my business on work ethic, on time management, and on just following what works for others. And 100%, not 90, 100% of my business was built by leads. That's dialing leads. Now, is that the right way? I don't know if it's the wrong way, but it's not the only way, right? Obviously, between marketing, walking and talking, using marketing on demand, there's so many other ways. But for me, if you're asking me what worked for me, it was dialing. And then from there, I was able to build my business to the point that it is today, which is, probably between 60 and 75% referral based. But that took a long time. Silas referenced, our celebrations. We used to call them reunions back in the day. And I remember I was a couple of years in, and there was this guy he left the company many years ago. And I was a very young guy in the business. I was doing okay, but nothing like him. He was probably, one of the top agents. And he said to me, Alex, I'm telling you, you're 50% referrals. 50% of your business should be referrals. I'm like, Dan, you're full of crap. There's no way in the world. I'm dialing. I'm doing everything I should be doing. There's no way. It's funny. It wasn't that long late. A few years later, I was at 60 or 70% referrals, because the bottom line is that if you do it the right way and you follow the process and you deal with your clients in the way that you want to be dealt with, they're going to naturally refer you business. Deal with people how you would want to be dealt with. build a relationship with your clients the way that you would want to build that relationship the other way around. Just look in the mirror, right? And the same way that I have relationships with my accountant, with other insurance, other lines of insurance, attorneys, doctors, whatever it is, that's what I expect from the people that I deal with. That's what I try to give over to my clients. But for me, it's 100% leads and then personally developed and referrals that came from there. At this point, it's progressed. I don't really make any outbound calls anymore. And now it's because I'm at 60 to 75% referrals, depending on the time. The rest of my business is coming really from live transfers. So it's a combination of live transfers and referrals and personally developed. For me, that's worked. I've never done that much in terms of walking and talking and other marketing and things like that. But at the same time, I appreciate it and I push my agents to do it because things change, and what worked maybe back in 2003 of being 100% leads. I'm sure that cannot work today. And you have to have more of call it a three-legged stool in terms of your business model.
That's great. So one of the questions that Courtney had asked is when you're talking about hundreds and thousands of dials, I mean, you're dialing the same people again and again and again and again. It's not you're one and done with somebody, right? It's our obligation and our responsibility to get them on the phone, and then where it goes, there it goes.
100%. And I'm glad that you said that, because obviously, you have to follow all the do not call list and all the rules. But I mean, I would say even today, if let's say the live transfer can't talk to me or I have a bad connection, so I'll call them back and I'll call them back until I reach them, and back in the day when I would dial from 8 in the morning until 9 p.m., whatever was legal, right? And the best times to dial always, now things have changed because obviously, cell phones we had cell phones back then, but not the way that we do now. But back in the day, 8 to 10 in the morning, 6 to 8, 6 to 9 at night, those were the best dialing times. And just because I called somebody once at 2 in the afternoon, because that's when the lead came in, are you joking? I'm not done. I would consistently call them, no exaggeration, 6, 7, maybe 8 or 9 times during the day. Now, of course, if they said to me, hey, Alex, call me back tomorrow at 9, okay, then I'm putting them on my to-do list. Back in the day, I was writing it on a notepad. Now it's going on to the CRM on my to-do list. And great, I'm calling them back then because they told me a time. But to Silas's point, I genuinely believe that we have a responsibility. I genuinely believe that, in this case, me, but any health markets agent that's trained well, so anybody on the Silas Jessup team that's trained well, you are the best person to help them. So you have a responsibility. You do. You have a moral responsibility to get through to them, because if you don't get through to them, what's going to happen? If they're not looking for insurance, then forget it. But if they are looking for insurance, then either they're going to do it themselves and they cannot do it as well as you can, or some enroller, because we're not enrollers, right? We're advisors. So some enroller is going to get through to them and help them with that one specific product that they have. I'm not going to mention any specific names or of companies, but again, we all know who's out there. The beauty of health markets is that we have a diverse portfolio. We're doing a positioning statement. We're doing a fact finding. We're actually building a relationship with them. We're doing it the right way. I'm not saying that nobody else does it the right way, but nobody else does it the right way. Okay, that's the reality. And if you genuinely believe that you're the best person to help them, then yeah, you have the responsibility to get through to them. If they say back off, then back off. But if not, you have to do everything you can to help them. And then the follow-up, obviously stay in touch with them and be there for them, etc. So yes, 100%. Keep calling.
So I'm just curious, like today, when you're mentoring a new agent, what is is there a number of dials that you would expect a new agent to be making, their first 6 months? I get what I'm trying to do here, honestly, is I'm challenging some people, because I know there's some people on the call where they think they can get by with 60, 70, 80, 100 phone dials, 150 phone dials in a week. I think coming out of the chute, I just don't think that's enough activity. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think you need a minimum of 500 to 600 dials a week, minimum. Yeah, you genuinely do. You need a minimum of 500 or 600 dials a week. You have to just keep calling. And it also has to be, you have to be calling at different times of the day. Different people are reachable at different times of the day. Again, I see this all the time with new agents. They say, I called all the leads. I said, you just got 30 leads yesterday. Like, what do you mean you called all the leads? I just basically look at them like, what? Like, what's going on over here? because they don't understand what the activity of dialing is. And again, I think our culture of dialing, I mean, back in the day, that's all many of us did. Some of us walked and talked and did other things, but there weren't all these other types of leads. There weren't live transfers. Live transfers, okay, not to get too deep into this, was a bless and a curse at the same time. It was a blessing because it made it easy for somebody to, your phone is, as I sit here right now, my phone's ringing, and it makes it a lot easier. But it's a curse because when it doesn't ring, we're just sitting there waiting, doing whatever we're doing on the internet, waiting for the phone to dial, right? That's a problem. That's a problem. So we forgot, we even those that had good work ethic lost it. That's why it's so important that you keep track of your dials. I don't care if you've been here for 10 years, you keep track of your dials while you're waiting for your live transfer to come in. So I tell my new agents, at the beginning, you're not taking live transfers. At a certain point, depending on the agent, we'll turn on their live transfers, but you're not stopping to dial. Right. You're going to be dialing, and then if the live transfer rings, so then you stop dialing and then you take that call, right? If you're concerned that while you're dialing, you're going to be missing the live transfer because it's going to hit your voicemail, right? Then use a different phone. I do that all the time. I tell them, sit in the office, use the office line to dial, and then your phone will ring on the live transfers, and you could be, dealing with both phones, which is something that I do anyway, by the way. I try to call, using several phones so that, if you do call 6-7 times a day, it's not that same phone number that's coming up. Okay. The other trick, last thing, the other trick that I would just say on dialing, which sounds like harassment, but that's okay, is I do the double dial. So the first time I get a lead and I call them, I'll call them. If they don't answer, I'll call again. 10 seconds later, I actually learned it from Keith Gleason many years ago. I'll do the double dial and it works. Yeah, you're going to have the guy that's going to say, why are you calling me so many times? Yeah, that'll happen. You make a joke, you apologize, you move on. If they're really obnoxious to you, they probably are going to be obnoxious anyway, and then, move on. But you make a joke, you apologize, but if somebody sees their phone ringing twice, there's a higher likelihood that they're going to answer the phone.
That's great. I want to go back to something that you said. This wasn't necessarily a part of the questions that I'd kind of laid out, but you talked specifically about positioning statement, fact finding. And I think, this is something we've embraced. Honestly, your mother taught me this years ago. You reinforced it in conversations that I had before I ever really was diligent about implementing it personally and with my team. So do you want to kind of talk through the psychology of that, once you engage with the consumer, what that process should look like?
100%. So to me, positioning statement and fact finding are everything. Literally everything. I remember I was doing a training many years ago in front of a full room. It was like the entire mid-Atlantic. So there were like 100 or 150 agents in the room. And I was actually role playing my positioning statement. And I overheard, he didn't want me to hear, but I overheard actually a friend, but an agent said, it looks like he's closing the sale during the positioning statement. And I'm thinking to myself, hell yeah, I am closing the sale in the positioning statement. Because to me, the relationship is built, the relationship for life. Okay, not just for the next hour, the relationship for life between myself and that client is made in the positioning statement. I know during the positioning statement whether or not I'm going to make a sale that day. Do I know what I'm selling? Of course not. I didn't do a fact finding. I didn't do a needs analysis yet. Do I know exactly what's going to happen in our relationship over the next 5 years? No, I'm not a prophet, but I do know because I am building a foundation. And again, not to use a pathetic analogy, but think about a house. If you build a house without a strong foundation, it could be the most beautiful home, but it's not going to work. It's going to fall, right? I'm no builder, okay? But you need that foundation. To me, the positioning statement is the foundation. What happens in the positioning statement, and I don't care, we could talk about in-person, virtual, Zoom, we could get there. I'm happy to talk about that. But I don't care your form and your method and where you're meeting the client. We'll get to that, like I said. But there has to be a strong positioning statement, because in the positioning statement, you are differentiating yourself between you as the advisor and everybody else in the world. I'm introducing myself as Alex Wertenteil, the health markets agent, and I don't talk for 10 minutes. I talk very quickly, okay? I don't talk for an hour. I spend 5 to 7 minutes talking about who I am. I mentioned about my family. You want to make yourself real. You want to make yourself relatable. You want to have a connection to them. And then more importantly, talk about the company that we represent. We're proud of the company we represent. Talk about health markets, talk about the brand, talk about the different lines of business. If within the first 5 minutes, you're not mentioning that we're owned by United Health Group, one of the largest companies in the world, right? If you're not talking about the different lines of business, health, life, disability, supplemental, Medicare, if you're not talking about that, if you're not talking about the consultative way that we do business, right? I'm not going to role play the entire positioning statement, although I'm happy to, and I'm happy to do that another time. But if you're not building that foundation in that first 5 or 10 minutes, then you're an enroller. Then what are you going to do? You're going to get on the phone with them and say, oh, Blue Cross is $100 with your subsidy and United is 80. Do you want the gold or the silver? They don't need you. They don't need you for that. They could go to eHealth Insurance. They could go to another website. What makes us different is who we are. But if we don't tell them who we are, and we don't tell them how we do business, and we don't tell them how we fill the gaps with supplemental, right? If we don't talk about that within the first 5 or 10 minutes on a high level, then when you get to the specifics and you start talking about in 20 or 30 minutes about hospital-wise and critical illness and all these other things, they're deer in the headlights. And frankly, even if they buy it because you're such a good talker, they're probably not going to keep it. Because in a month or two, when they see Chesapeake UHC on their bank statement, they're going to be like, what was that again? How did that work? Because shame on you. And again, that happens to me sometimes. Sometimes I just find myself moving too quickly, right? Shocker, right? I find myself moving too quickly, and it comes back to bite me. We have to slow down and spend the time in the positioning statement, because to me, that is, and I got super passionate about this, because that's who health markets is, right? We're not enrollers, we're advisors, we're multi-line, multi-carrier. I don't care if the client, the client's only buying health insurance today. Great. But we still want to talk to them about life insurance. We still want to talk to them about Medicare, whether it's going to be for them in the future or a friend or a colleague or somebody else. Because there's no worse call in the world to me. I guess it could be worse, but for me, it's a bad call when you find out from your client that they bought life insurance from somebody else. And they didn't buy it from somebody else because they didn't want to buy from you. It's because they didn't know that you do it. Right? The worst feeling in the world. It's like a punch in the gut. Same thing for Medicare, same thing for everything else that we do. Because if they just think that, oh, your health markets, your health insurance, we have to explain that to them. We have to explain the process. We have to explain to them that what we're doing today is not set in stone. We can make changes, open enrollment, all that good stuff. That is the key. And then from there, it's a perfect progression, evolution into the fact finding, because the positioning statement is what I call the macro, and the fact finding, needs analysis, discovery is the micro, right? You're getting into the specifics. So the positioning statement is not threatening to them. It's just more high level, and you have an opportunity there to educate them on the ACA, what's going on in the world, new compliance, and educating them on what you're seeing in the market. And then you get into the needs analysis, what you're looking for, what's important to you, tell them about your experiences, your doctors, and all that good stuff. Positioning statement plus fact finding equals sale, and the right sale for them that they're choosing.
Very well said. So I want to pivot a little bit to how you're running your business today. Do you have a storefront? Are you virtual? Are you primarily in person? Like, what's that dynamic look like?
So I'm at this point, it was very hard for me, I'll be honest. I'm a face-to-face person. Like if you all turned off your screens right now, I would not be able to talk. I need to interact with people. So I'm like, at this point, I'm probably 50-50. But I'm only 50-50. I'm just going to tell you, I'm only 50-50 because a lot of my business right now, obviously, is referrals and personally developed, going back to my book, which I'm happy to talk to. It's two different things. There's referrals and working my book. And I do a decent job of working my book also, which we could talk about. But I'm not in a storefront. I'm in right now, where I'm sitting right now is the Maryland office in Baltimore. Our office was south for many years and closer to DC. And we moved it to Baltimore last fall. So I work out of it's the corporate Maryland, health markets corporate office here in Maryland, and I have some agents that come in. So it's not a storefront, but it's a nice Class A office building. But I do have clients that walk in. It's going to take time because, like I said, my office was 45 minutes south for 20 years. And we moved to a new location only 9 months ago. So it's going to take time for clients to start coming in and knowing where we are. But I'm constantly inviting clients in, and it's a good location, so they're happy to come. So I would say I'm 50% in person, 50% virtual. On virtual, I do everything I can to get them onto a Zoom or a Teams or something else. Again, it's not realistic. Sometimes you have to meet the clients where they want to be met. If they want to do phone and that's the only way that we're going to be able to do this, then we do it that way. But I encourage them strongly to do it in person, either to come to me, and I still do drive to appointments a lot less than I used to. Again, I don't do the 35 or 40,000 miles that I did for, a solid 15, 20 years. COVID really stopped that. So with COVID, I had like everything, you have to change quickly, and we had no choice. So I evolved during COVID. And then over the last, 1 to 2 years, I kind of have found a happy medium that I'm comfortable with.
So are you in multiple states? How many states do you operate in and sell in?
So I'm licensed in, 30 states, but I would say that I write 90 to 95% of my business in Maryland. Even the virtual, I like dealing with my state exchange, my people. I feel comfortable, even if I'm not sitting in front of them, 2 hours away in Maryland. I know where they are. I could talk their language. I'm comfortable with it. And frankly, I have enough business just writing my business in Maryland. I am licensed in other states. So, I had a client that moved to Tennessee. So I helped her with something in Tennessee yesterday. But again, to me, she was still a Maryland client. I do get referrals. And when I get referrals, that's why for referrals, I will help them. For many years, I would send out all the referrals, and I still send out some of them. But I would say 90% of my business is Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Delaware, DC, surrounding states. I definitely write some business. And then I have sprinkles in Florida, California, and other states.
Yeah, well, and I think that's worth noting, because I think our company agents have gone one of two directions. And I feel like our team here in Indiana and Michigan, we figured out how to drill deep where we're at, even in a very rural community with maybe a much less population density. We've been able to do tremendous things. And I see you doing the same thing, 15 million FYCRs, but 90 to 95% of it written in your backyard. I think that's the right way to do business. I think business is stickier that way. I think you have the opportunity to build a better relationship. I think you develop more referrals from that. To me, that's the right way. And I'm glad I knew that's where you were, but I'm glad you are.
Yeah, and again, I've gotten slapped on the wrist from my sales leaders and others that I don't do a good job, and I'm willing to take the rebuke that I don't do a good job of teaching the FFM, because in Maryland we're a state exchange, and obviously I teach that, but I don't do a good job of teaching the FFM. We have to give them opportunities, and again, and they're not wrong.
Okay.
I do believe that there is opportunity to and you should be licensed in other states. So whether it's referral or whatnot. There we go. So you definitely want to make sure. I see nothing wrong. Nothing wrong. You should be licensed in other states, but I would say that agents that have the same amount of business in their home state as they do in other states, there's something off. To me, they're just more enrollers. Unless for some reason, unless you live in South Dakota or Montana, not picking on those states, but let's say the population is lower and you don't have, again, Maryland is not Florida, right? It's not like I live in Texas, right? So if I could write, the business, and it's not just me, and there's plenty of business for all my agents to write in Maryland also. I just feel like to Silas's point, you're going to get much, much stronger referrals, because even if I don't see them, here's the point, even if I don't visit with them the first time because they just want to get it done, if I'm in their area in 6 months, I could pop in, right? It's just a much easier conversation and relationship when they are local. The more I'm seeing in terms of agents that are writing in 30 or 40 states, more and more of them are enrollers. Some of them are truly enrollers. Some of them are actually answering the phone right now, enrollment center. That's a problem. But even the ones that are not, it's not the same, and I don't believe that they're just banging the phones, and I don't believe that they're spending the time to do the positioning statement, the fact finding, and everything else that we spoke about.
Right. No, I totally agree with you. So from an infrastructure perspective, You're obviously a sales leader, you got a team, but do you have a personal team of staff members? Do you have assistants, sub agents? What's that look like for you?
So I have a problem. I feel like I'm at a therapy session here. I'm a little bit of
Let
a,
it all out, Alex.
I wouldn't call myself a control freak, but I don't delegate as well as I probably should. So the answer is no, I don't have an assistant. Meaning we have a corporate sales assistant, and my sales assistant is, nothing against anybody on this call, is the best in the company. She's fantastic, and she's been with us for many years, but she doesn't deal with my personal business, like, at all. I mean, once in a blue moon, I'll ask her to scan something, but that's not even. So I deal with everything myself, which again, I'm not advocating for that. So I do need an assistant that can help me with a lot of the things that I'm doing that I shouldn't be doing. And that's where Silas comes in, and he could definitely teach you how to do that. So the answer is I do everything myself. I take all the calls myself. And again, I need to learn how to delegate, but yes, I'm overwhelmed. And it seems like every year I'm more and more overwhelmed because I'm doing everything myself, and I would be even more efficient if I delegated it. But I take all the calls myself. I don't have a dialer or anything like that.
So, how many hours a week are you working right now? I mean, I know you've got a family, and how many now? Is it 5? 6?
I have a wife and 5 children that range from 5 to 19 years old. I definitely have my hands full. I mean, I'm working hard, but the truth is I'm not working more than 50 to 55 hours a week. I work decent long days. I'll work from 8 in the morning until I don't count, like, if you responses to emails at 4 a.m. that doesn't count as work to me. So let's say in the office, let's just say 8 to 6, 8 to 7. I do not work weekends. I never did. So for me, like Friday mid-afternoon until Monday morning is sacred. It's just, again, that's just what works for me. Back in the day, when I used to do face-to-face appointments, I used to work 2-3 evenings. I don't do that as much anymore. I really don't work that many evenings anymore. I've really slowed down on that just to be around the family at night. But I'm definitely not working weekends. The truth is, I'm almost embarrassed to say this. Even during open enrollment, I barely work weekends. Maybe a Sunday morning here and there, but that's really it.
I don't think you should be embarrassed of that, man. Many of us are trying to get to that point, and I think that's something to be commended, not something to be embarrassed about, in my opinion. But I want to talk a little bit about what's driving your sup and life sales, because I think that is a huge amount, and I didn't look at the total number, but a huge amount of the FYCRs that you post are specifically subs and then life. And so there's got to be a process, there's got to be a philosophy around that. I think it's core to who you are. But if you want to talk through maybe some of the key things that are driving specifically your supplemental sales, I think that's where our agents could probably use some help.
So to me, 100%, I'm going to come back to it. I'll try not to belabor the point, and I'll move on. But I'm 100% confident. There's certain things that I say, do it your own way. There are certain things that I believe that there's only one way. So in terms of supplemental sales, I believe you have to focus on a strong positioning statement, because if you don't, and just like I said before, put yourself in their shoes, right? Imagine that you were the client, you knew nothing about insurance. And if you're a brand new agent, maybe, and you came from a different industry, you could really relate to this, right? Imagine you came into this, you met with Silas Jessup, he's your agent, and 30 minutes into the call, you're talking about Blue Cross, United, copays, deductibles, what's covered, is my lisinopril covered, whatever else, they ask you. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, they're talking about hospital indemnity, critical illness, and other policies. And you're like, what? Like, how does that work? The answer is that if you set the stage and you set that foundation in the positioning statement, that's where the sale is made. Because that, and 100% for me, not 90, 100% for me of my supplemental sales are made in the positioning statement. Okay? Because even the sales that come a year or two later when I come back to them, and I'll talk about working my book in a minute, or it was because of that conversation that we had on that first appointment, because we set ourselves apart. What makes health markets different? Yeah, health, life, disability, multi-line, multi-carrier, all of that. But the other thing that makes us different is that in a consultative way, we're able to understand your needs and your budget. And we have creative and out-of-the-box ways to offset the cost of your deductibles and your out-of-pocket expenses that's unheard of in the industry. And that's what I'm talking about during the positioning statement. I'm talking about how we have these other products that Health Markets offers through companies that we work with, that you have your core insurance, right? You have your core insurance policy, whether it's Blue Cross, United, Kaiser, whoever it is. And then we have these supplemental products that fill the gaps of deductibles, out-of-pocket expenses. And in addition to that, put money in your pocket in the event of an illness, accident, hospitalization to help you with incidental expenses. During the positioning statement, if you're only talking about supplemental products to help offset the cost for other expenses that come up, you're doing yourself a disservice and them a disservice. And if you only talk about supplemental in terms of filling the gaps of deductibles and copays, you're also missing. You have to talk about it from both perspectives. And we have the products that do both. So let's say take a Hospitalized. So for me, Hospitalized at this point is by far my biggest seller. Okay. So if you have a Hospitalized, you're using a Hospitalized with the lump sum benefit, and we could get as granular as you want, right? With the lump sum benefit and a nice daily amount and the ER benefit, but put the ER benefit on the side for a second, the core benefit to be there to help offset the cost of deductibles and out-of-pocket expenses associated with the health insurance. I don't know about Indiana. In Maryland, we don't have deductibles that are less than $1,000 or $2,000 with $6,000 or $7,000 out of pocket, even on a gold. On a bronze, you're dealing with $6,000 to $8,000. Or 9,000, right? So it's not like back in the day when we had products that had, that had much lower deductibles. It's unheard of. Even if you go to a gold plan right now in Maryland, you could still have room for a supplemental because you're using the Hospitalized to fill the gaps of the deductibles and out of pocket. You're dealing with smart people. Don't just stuff it in and say, here's your solution. Educate them. Spend the time. And again, and say, I'm too busy. No, you're not. You're not too busy. You have enough time to spend another 10, 15 minutes educating your client. And that's how I view myself. I view myself with my clients as a teacher. I'm not a salesperson. And it sounds like I'm, of course you are. No, I really don't view myself that way. I view myself as a friend, a colleague, an educator, building a relationship with them and teaching them a smarter way to find a solution for their insurance needs and their financial well-being for their family. But I spend the time to educate them on that. I never forget, and then I'll get to the last point here. I'll never forget years and years ago, I did this whole presentation. I met with the client, and this goes back. It's a really old story. So I'm dating myself. It's when health insurance was still underwritten. Okay. And I remember I sold them a United Healthcare Golden Rule policy when it was like a straight health insurance policy, and then Chesapeake supplements. And I remember they called me literally in a panic. Alex, we don't know what to do. We got denied for the supplemental, but we got approved for the health insurance. We can't do this. I ingrained in them so strongly that you can't have one without the other. You need the supplemental to fill the gap. There was a story that was completely the opposite. They got denied for the health insurance. They got approved for the supplemental. They ended up keeping the supplemental and they kept it with their other health insurance because they appreciated the value of the supplemental. Very often retention is low because we don't spend the time educating them on how it works and how it benefits them. I have it for my own family. I believe in these products. And again, it's interesting. I deal with a very large, wide, economic, classes. Okay. So I have clients that are on Medicaid, right? I have clients that are on Medicaid and I have multimillionaires as clients. So I'm dealing with a wide range. I happen to believe that there's different supplemental products that can work for different people. Okay. So let's say for myself personally, yeah, the 20,000 critical illness didn't speak to me, but Family Heritage did, Globe Life did, right? Why? Because there's a larger payout. And then after a number of years, I don't want to speak to, I don't know, state specific in Indiana, but after a number of years, you get your money back. So that's something that spoke to me. My family's protected. I have little kids if they get injured, right? It can help me with my deductibles. I've used them, right? I have the cancer policy. My wife is over 40. If she goes for a mammogram, I get a couple of $100, right? There's value there. But again, what I'm saying right now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, that also speaks to educating yourself on the product and educating yourself on how to use the product and who it works for. But again, coming back to the core point, it's educating them on the value of supplemental, and that's a relationship that stays to the extent, and Silas asked me where the numbers come from. So a lot of my business during the year, new clients that come in, it's interesting. With all this regulation, we'll see how it affects short-term, how it affects fixed indemnity. We don't have short-term in Maryland, and we haven't for a number of years. So right now, if they don't have an SCP, their only option for them right now is a health protector guard. That's it. And we'll do a health protector guard with the appropriate, supplemental, whatever they're allowed to have with health protector guard. And it's a stopgap. But I'm telling them, but I'm being honest with them. I'm telling them, this is not ideal, right? John, this is not ideal, right? You missed open enrollment. We're going to do this because you need this stopgap. And we're going to come back. I'm going to put you on my calendar now for November so that I can help you with a more comprehensive, robust product. Why am I doing that now? First of all, I want to make sure the relationship is there and it's sticking, but it's also so they don't get off the phone and then call somebody else and somebody says, that's what he sold you? Why did he sell you that? Well, no, because I explained to them and I was honest with them that this is the only product you could get today. But I educated them and I spent the time to do that. So to me, that's literally everything that we do. And because of that, I had the ability, because we had that relationship, I had that ability to come back in 3 months, 6 months, a year, even if I already sold them supplemental and then sell them something else. Because on that first sale, we analyzed their needs and their budget. Let's say their budget was 300, and based on their budget, we were able to get in a gold plan with a subsidy and hospital-wise and maybe a dental. And maybe that day they couldn't afford the extra cancer policy or something else. Then maybe in 6 months when we do a policy review, right, you have the opportunity to put something else in there. Don't assume that just because, very often my agents say to me, I already sold subs. What am I going to talk to them about? They're just going to complain about their product. No, they're not. You spend a few minutes talking to them about what you've done, what you did 6 months ago, and then you talk about some of the newer products that we have. Even if they're not brand new products, they're new to them because you never discussed it with them. So we have new products that we can discuss with you. Whether it's another company, the same company, it doesn't make a difference, right? Let's say use Accident Wise. So Accident Wise is a brand new product. It's a great opportunity to come back to clients. I had a client, literally, she's over 65. I think she's a 70-year-old client. She had Medicare from an agent of mine because it was before I started doing Medicare, but I helped her with the dental and vision. And she actually responded to one of my, semi-annual review emails, right? And she said, hey, listen, can we have a policy review? And I called her. Her Medicare was good. She has like a plan F. She's not changing that. She's good. I said, let's review your dental. She's like, oh, I'm paying $30 for my dental. I'm not changing that. But I'm like, I could have said, all right, Connie, have a great day. Talk to you next year. No. I said, oh, well, let's look at let's look at the rest of the portfolio, make sure that you're fully protected, what's going on in your life. And she starts telling me how she's been falling recently. This just happened 3 days ago. Out of the blue, she told me, I was just talking to her. I spend the time to talk to her. That's really what it is. And she started telling me how she's been falling recently and she had to go to the ER and her policy covered her. I said, I'm so sorry to hear that. We actually have a new product that's actually for seniors also now. And she bought a $44 Accident Wise. So I thought, when I got on that call, it's all about expectations. I thought she was going to buy a new dental policy. I thought I was going to change her to she had a very, low level, old Chesapeake Dental. She ended up saying, no, that's fine. But she bought the Accident Wise. Because you spend the time talking to your clients, they trust you, and you have a relationship. It's a lot easier to do that with a current client where there's no barriers, right? You're not that sales guy. You're Alex, you're Sean, you're Michelle. I'm just reading names, right? They know you already. They trust you already. You've serviced them well. If you tell them something, they're not necessarily just going to jump and buy it, and they shouldn't. But there's not going to be that fear of the unknown. They're actually going to listen to what you have to say. And if it makes sense, they'll move forward. So a lot of my business over the last number of years, outside of open enrollment, is working my book and helping them with new products. And I want to be clear, I'm not talking about churning, okay? Because very often agents interpret that, and I've seen this of, oh, well, I'm going to just cancel that stuff and get them a new stuff. And it's, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about incremental. There are times where there's a better product and you have to cancel. I'm not saying you should never do that. But if all you're doing is churning your book, you're not helping you're not helping your renewals, you're not helping anybody really. It's just, I'm talking about incremental business that they could afford now, maybe a simplified issue life or something else that they couldn't afford or didn't think they could afford then because it was new.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I know we're getting towards the end of the hour here, and I know I want to be respectful of your time. This has been really great. I think two things I'd like to finish up with just quickly. Number one, I'd like to ask you, what would be your advice to a new agent who's struggling? And then the last thing that I'd like to just ask is, why health markets? You've chosen to hang your shingle here for a long time, and have, I think, been a tremendous part of the success that we've enjoyed as an organization. You've driven a lot of that over the years. So if we could kind of wrap up with those two questions, that'd be super helpful.
Okay, so I'm going to come to the second one second. I think that's a good way to end. In terms of new agents, I'll tell you like this. To me, the number one issue that I see with new agents getting off the ground is twofold. Number one, truly learning work ethic and truly dialing. And again, when I say dialing, it could be dialing or it could be whatever the activity is. So if the activity is marketing, then it's marketing. But truly putting in the hours. If you ask the average agent how many hours a week they work, they'll tell you a number and it's significantly lower because work means really work. And I'm a big believer, right? I'm a big believer in spending time with the family, and I'm very involved in my community and all of that. I'm not working 90 hours a week. I never was. I used to, I always laugh when I say this because I think about when I was young in the business and they were top agents and used to get on stage saying, oh, I work 80, 90 hours a week. And I don't know if it was true or not, but we used to think like, wow, the more I think about it now, like that's something to be proud of. Like to me, the beauty of health markets, to Silas's point, is balance. And that's probably going to come to my second point of it's all about balance. And the beauty of health markets is the ability to have and strike that balance. But that's number one, is really learning work ethic and keeping yourself accountable because you don't have a boss. Silas is not your boss, right? He's not your employer. He's your mentor. He's your leader, but he's not your boss. You don't have a boss. You're your own boss. But you have to keep yourself accountable for the time that you're really working. The other thing that I'm finding with new agents, which is dramatically different than when I started and when Silas started, is that this business there's a lot of benefits to it. The technology is amazing. It was non-existent when we started. The portfolio is robust and comprehensive. It was non-existent when we started, right? The training, the portfolio, the technology, everything was non-existent, which makes it a lot easier to sell, right? We have so many products, so many companies, all of that. That's the good side of it. The downside is that it's super overwhelming, super, super overwhelming. When we started in this business, I had to learn DigiQuote and I still had rate books. It wasn't that complicated. It was learn this one product, learn how to sell, and just go sell the hell out of it, whether it was, and basically fit it into every client because that's all we had. What I would encourage you to do as new agents is start simple. And I don't want to dictate what those products should be. Like in Maryland, I know what I tell my agents, but I don't know, your landscape. I would encourage you to pick one or two health carriers. It's just my personal view. One or two supplements. Don't try to learn every supplement with Globe Life, with United, with Chesapeake, because sometimes analysis paralysis sets in and it's just too much to handle, right? You can't handle it and you end up doing nothing because you're overwhelmed. Try to learn one or two products, sell that a few times. If you come across a client that potentially needs or wants something else, then you bring Silas or or a colleague in as appropriate, and slowly you'll add product. But to me, those are the two things as a new agent that I would encourage you to focus on, are really working when you're working. Go back to the old school calendar. Of course, you should have a calendar on your phone and a Google Calendar and whatever else. But maybe at the beginning, I hate to say it, you should have either a whiteboard or a piece of paper and block off times that you're working, or more importantly, at the beginning of the week, that's what I did. Block off times that you're not working. Tuesday night, I'm going to dinner with my wife. Thursday night, I have softball with my daughter, whatever. Okay, block it off. Block off times that you're not working, but the other times you're working, and you're actually working, and you're keeping yourself accountable for that time. Okay, because there's a lot of distractions. There's more distractions than there were 20 years ago, right? Really. And it's very easy not to work. The second point, in terms of why health markets, again, I don't want to get too sappy and too emotional, but I really do. I genuinely wake up, right? I'm not full of crap. Okay, I wake up every single morning, and I thank God that I'm here. I do. I can't imagine being anywhere else. Why? Whoever the executive team is, I feel like they've always, and they're all different, and I have great relationships with all of them, and I always have. And again, I miss some of our former leaders, but I have a great relationship, and I appreciate our current leaders. They've always looked out for us as the agent and caring for what our needs are. I don't know. And again, the beauty of the seat that Silas and I are in is that we meet a lot of agents that are coming from a lot of industries. And again, when you're decent or good at what you do, of course you get calls of, go here, go there, trying to recruit you away. I've never seen another opportunity that was quite like health markets, that had, and again, of course, the portfolio and the technology and all of that, that's all wonderful. But to me, it doesn't just come down to, am I getting paid 81% on Transamerica or 92% on Transamerica? If it came to, when it comes down to that, probably this is not for you, right? There's no secret. The commission rate might be slightly higher somewhere else. So why am I still here? I'm not stupid, right? So why am I still here? It's because of all the tangibles and the intangibles that come along with it. All the resources, the ease of use. The fact that I don't need to deal with anything, right? That I get one 1099 at the end of the year, that I do applications. I'm out there helping people every single day. But more importantly, that I'm actually part of something. I feel like I have two families. Of course, my personal family is extremely close to me, but I feel like I'm part of the health markets family. It was hard for 2-3 years not to see anybody, over the last, 6 months, and back, down in Nashville, it was nice to see people that we haven't seen. People want to be part of something. I've seen a lot of agents move on, very talented people, but they're not part of something. They're working on their own right now. The beauty of health markets is all the resources that they're giving us, which are tremendous, but it's also what they have created. They've created a culture of giving, a culture of being part of something, and humans are humans, right? I don't care if you're selling in person or virtually. Humans want to connect with other humans, and they want to be part of something. At health markets, you're truly part of something, and you're part of something where people care. They care about you. They care about your well-being. They want you to be successful. And when people ask me why I'm still here, that's the reason.
I agree, man. And I echo many of those comments. I mean, I've spent over 2 decades now with the organization, and I've looked at a lot of other opportunities as well. And I haven't found all the pieces that we've been able to put together here. And part of it is, I think too, and I think you'd probably echo this, is having the ability to impact the direction of the organization. And I think you're in a position that not many are. And I find myself in that same position, which is a blessing on a number of fronts. So, buddy, man, you put a lot of effort and passion into our conversation today, and I think this has been very impactful for all the agents that are on the call. Thank you for doing this. I very much appreciate it. I know when I jumped on your call a couple of weeks ago, and you said, "Hey, can I reciprocate?" I'm like, "Absolutely, you can." I so appreciate you taking the time today. Thank you for the hour that you've given us. We'll wrap things up here, team. You guys help me thank Alex for being here today. I know everybody's on.
I appreciate it.
Awesome.
I appreciate it. Thank you guys very much. And again, to me, it's all about finding that balance. Find that balance in your life, because if you find that balance, then when you're working, you're actually happy when you're working and you're enjoying what you do. So find the balance and just love what you do. All right.
Absolutely.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Everybody else who's on the call, thank you again for being here today. Again, we won't have ADT next week, but we will jump back in the week after. Tuesdays at 10 o'clock is kind of it should be a standing appointment, I think, at least if you're a tier 1 or tier 2 agent. So if you need anything this week, let me know. Otherwise, everybody take care. Have a good Tuesday.
Bye, you too.
Yeah. Bye-bye.